picture this scene. It is May 2nd, 1939, and we are inside the dugout at Briggs Stadium in Detroit.
Right.
And this towering, famously stoic man walks up to his manager, Joe McCarthy, and he utters a sentence that, it instantly alters baseball history.
Yeah, it really does.
He simply says, "I'm benching myself, Joe, for the good of the team."
Wow.
Yeah. And then he takes the lineup card and he walks it out to the umpires himself. And when the stadium announcer breaks the news to the crowd, this giant of a man just sits quietly on the bench with tears in his eyes.
It's just such a heavy moment.
It is.
Yeah.
Because with that single painful decision, an unfathomable streak of 2,130 consecutive games comes to an end. A record that wouldn't even be touched for another 56 years.
Which is just wild to think about. I mean, it remains one of the most poignant moments in American sports history. And what makes it carry so much weight is that this wasn't just a star player taking a routine day off,
Right.
This was the man known universally as the Iron Horse.
Exactly. And so today's deep dive is all about Henry Louis Gehrig.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're listening to this, you almost certainly know the name.
Oh, absolutely.
You know the tragic incurable disease that was eventually named after him, the Iron Horse moniker. But the actual human story here goes so far beyond like a medical tragedy or just a list of batting averages.
It really does. It's so much deeper.
It is this massive, gripping tale of relentless drive. It's about living an entire professional life in the shadow of pop culture giants, and ultimately, it's about the unimaginable grace a person can show when their own body turns against them.
Yeah, and we're going to trace his path from this impoverished childhood in New York to becoming the absolute backbone of baseball's greatest dynasty.
Right.
But to really grasp how someone could willingly play over 2,000 games, I mean, we're talking enduring broken bones, severe back spasms, untreated concussions without a single complaint. We first have to look at the immense pressure he was born into.
Yeah, because the environment that built him was just incredibly unforgiving. Gehrig was born in Manhattan in 1903 to German immigrants, and right from the start, he was a physical anomaly. He weighed almost 14 pounds at birth.
Which is just, staggering.
Right, 14 pounds.
Yeah. And he actually grew up speaking German in the household. He didn't even learn English until he was 5 years old.
Wow.
But that sheer physical mass he possessed from day one, it's deeply symbolic, really, considering the psychological and familial weight he was forced to carry almost immediately.
Because the tragedy his family faced was practically relentless. His parents, Heinrich and Christina, they had 4 children. Lou was the only one who survived past infancy.
Yeah.
His 2 sisters died of whooping cough and measles, and his brother died as an infant. So you have this massive boy who suddenly realizes, he is the sole vessel for his family's survival.
Exactly. And you have to factor in the socioeconomic reality of early 20th century New York. His father was a sheet metal worker, but Heinrich suffered from epilepsy and severe alcoholism.
Which made things so unstable.
Oh, incredibly. It meant he was frequently unemployed and largely incapacitated. So the entire burden of the family's survival fell on his mother, Christina.
Right.
She worked tirelessly as a maid, became the main breadwinner, and she ruled the household as this incredibly strict disciplinarian.
So young Lou is constantly doing chores.
Right.
Running errands, folding laundry, just trying to be the ultimate dutiful son. He's absorbing all of his mother's anxiety. But at the exact same time, he's discovering this supernatural talent for baseball.
Which is the crazy part.
Yeah, because at just 17 years old, his high school team traveled to play at Cubs Park in Chicago, which is the stadium we now know as Wrigley Field.
Right, Wrigley Field.
And in front of 10,000 people, this high school kid hits a grand slam, completely out of the Major League Park.
And you have to understand, hitting a ball out of a Major League Park was exceptionally rare, even for seasoned professionals back in 1920.
Oh, wow. So a kid doing it is just insane.
Exactly. It's easy to look at his youth and see this classic sports prodigy narrative, But the intersection of his physical prowess and that intense psychological burden, that is the real key to Lou Gehrig.
How so?
Well, his mother was fiercely protective, almost to the point of suffocation. She actually ruined all of his romances until he was in his 30s.
Wait, really? In his 30s?
Yeah. Because he was the sole surviving child and his father was so unreliable, Lou developed this desperate need to be the reliable one.
Ah, I see. So he could never, ever let his mother down.
Exactly.
And that right there, that's the origin of the Iron Horse durability. It wasn't just athletic grit, Playing hard was a deeply ingrained psychological necessity to be the one person in a chaotic world who always shows up.
Spot on. And that dutiful nature, it actually almost cost him his career before it even started.
How did that happen?
So Gehrig went to Columbia University on a football scholarship to study engineering. He was this bruising fullback, but he also played baseball. And before his freshman year, the legendary and notoriously ruthless manager of the New York Giants, John McGraw, spotted him.
Okay, John McGraw.
Right. And McGraw convinced this naive college kid to go play summer professional ball for the Hartford Senators.
But wait, amateurism rules were incredibly strict back then, right? College players weren't allowed anywhere near Pro Bowl.
McGraw knew that perfectly well, so he told Gehrig to just play under a fake name to protect his collegiate eligibility.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and the name they chose was Henry Lewis.
Henry Louis Gehrig goes by Henry Lewis. That's barely even an alias.
Right. It's terrible. Unsurprisingly, he was discovered and immediately banned from collegiate sports for his freshman year.
Oh, man.
Yeah, but he eventually made it back to Columbia sports in 1922, pitching and playing first base. And by April 1923, a Yankee scout named Paul Krischel was watching him.
And what did Krischel think?
Well, Krischel wasn't impressed with Gehrig's pitching mechanics at all, but then he watched Gehrig step to the plate and launch a 450-foot home run that landed at 116th Street and Broadway.
Wow. That'll do it.
Yeah, he signed him to the Yankees shortly after.
Which brings us to the legendary start of the streak itself. Yeah. June 2nd, 1925. Now, this is one of the most persistent myths in all of baseball.
Oh, absolutely.
The story usually goes that the Yankees' regular first baseman, Wally Pipp, has a headache. He asks the manager for an aspirin and the day off. The manager puts young Lou Gehrig in the lineup, and Gehrig never leaves. Pipp essentially loses his entire career over a mild headache.
It's a fantastic piece of folklore, but the reality involves much more deliberate managerial strategy.
Right.
Wally Pipp wasn't just some placeholder. He was a two-time American League home run champion. But by 1925, he was in a brutal slump. The entire Yankees team was struggling immensely.
Okay.
And manager Miller Huggins was just desperate to shake up the clubhouse culture.
So he didn't just target Pipp.
Right. Huggins actually benched several underperforming veterans that day. The headache was just the final convenient excuse for a manager who had already decided to make a sweeping change.
That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. Once Huggins put Gehrig in, it wasn't a headache that kept Pipp on the bench. It was Gehrig's undeniable, overwhelming talent. Gehrig stepped onto the field and didn't miss a single game for the next 14 years.
14 years of everyday play. I mean, he secured the job and just refused to let it go. But here is the fascinating paradox of Lou Gehrig.
Yeah.
He becomes arguably the greatest first baseman in the history of the game, stepping into the murderer's row era of the Yankees, which is a lineup so lethal it supposedly killed opposing pitchers' careers.
Right, it was terrifying.
But being the best player on the field didn't make him the most famous player on his own team. He spent his prime completely engulfed in the larger-than-life shadow of Babe Ruth.
Oh, the contrast between the two of them, especially in the 1927 season, is the perfect distillation of this dynamic. Well, in 1927, Lou Gehrig put together what many consider one of the greatest offensive seasons ever recorded. He hit .373. He hit 47 home runs.
Wow.
He drove in a then-record 175 runs, which is just an astronomical figure. He had 117 extra base hits. He even won the league MVP.
And yet, history barely remembers Gehrig's 1927 season because that was the exact same year Babe Ruth hit his mythological 60 home runs.
Exactly.
The headlines, the glory, the chaotic public adoration, all of it just gravitated to the Babe.
Yeah, and their uniform numbers actually symbolize this hierarchy perfectly. In 1929, when the Yankees first debuted numbers on the backs of their jerseys, Gehrig wore number 4.
Because it was a lucky number.
No, it was simply because he batted 4th in the lineup, right behind Babe Ruth, who wore number 3.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Gehrig was literally and figuratively destined to follow Ruth.
Even their playing styles felt like an extension of their personalities, Ruth was this jazz-age showman. He hit towering, majestic high flies that the crowds would gasp at.
Right.
Gehrig, on the other hand, was built like an engineer's schematic of a power hitter. He had thick, incredibly powerful legs, which actually earned him the somewhat teasing nickname Biscuit Pants.
Biscuit Pants. That's great.
Yeah, and he hit screaming, terrifying line drives. Lefty Grove, who was one of the most intimidating pitchers of that era and notorious for throwing at batters' heads, he actually refused to throw at Gehrig.
Really? Lefty Grove.
Yeah, Grove said, "You can never tell what that big fellow will do if you get him mad at you."
That's amazing. He had this quiet, simmering intensity, but the universe just seemed constantly determined to keep him out of the spotlight.
Yeah, give me an example.
Well, take 1932. Gehrig becomes the first player in the 20th century to hit 4 home runs in a single game.
Which is a monumental feat.
Huge.
Yeah.
But pick up the sports section the next day, and Gehrig isn't the headline. The front page was dominated by John McGraw, the same manager who gave him that fake college alias, announcing his retirement.
Oh, you have got to be kidding me. Gehrig just could not win a news cycle.
Never.
But what he did own entirely was the streak. And to fully understand the streak, we have to look at the dark side of playing 2,130 consecutive games. To maintain that record, Gehrig played through a level of physical trauma that is, frankly, horrifying to view through a modern medical lens.
It really is. Keep in mind, this is an era long before batting helmets or modern sports medicine. If you got hurt, the treatment was essentially to take it up or just ignore it.
Right.
In 1933, a pitcher named Earl Whitehill hit Gehrig in the head with a fastball. Gehrig was nearly knocked unconscious.
Oh, my gosh.
And he stayed in the game. Then, in a 1934 exhibition game, he was hit above the right eye and was knocked out cold for 5 minutes. He was back in the lineup the very next day.
That is insane. And then there was the infamous lumbago attack of July 1934.
Yeah.
He suffered lower back spasms so severe he had to be physically assisted off the field.
Yeah, it was brutal.
The pain was paralyzing. The next day, he couldn't even bend over. But to keep the streak alive, the manager writes him into the starting lineup as the shortstop, batting leadoff.
Yep.
Gehrig hobbles to the plate, somehow manages to hit a single, and is immediately pulled for a pinch runner so he can go lie down. He never even took the field defensively.
And later in life, x-rays actually revealed that Gehrig had played through multiple undisclosed bone fractures in his hands and feet.
Wait, really? Fractures?
Yeah, he would break a bone, not tell the training staff, and just adjust his grip and keep swinging.
Which raises the obvious question, why?
Yeah.
I mean, his wife, Eleanor, who was instrumental in finally helping him establish independence from his overbearing mother, she was so concerned about his health that when he reached 1,999 games, she tried to fake being sick just to get him to stay home and let the streak end.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so why wouldn't he just sit down?
Because sitting down would have dismantled his entire sense of self. You know, he didn't crave the spotlight or the celebrity that Ruth enjoyed. His self-worth was entirely predicated on being the indestructible foundation of the team.
Right, the reliable one.
Exactly. His value was his reliability. To take a day off for a broken bone would have felt like a fundamental betrayal of his own identity.
But relying entirely on your physical durability creates this terrifying vulnerability. If your entire identity is built on an unbreakable body, what happens when your nervous system begins to sever the connection between your brain and your muscles?
And that is exactly what began to happen midway through the 1938 season. Gehrig started quietly telling people he felt tired.
Just tired.
Yeah. His statistics were still objectively good, but they were significantly diminished from his usual superhuman standards.
And by the time spring training rolled around in 1939, it was escalating from fatigue to a really scary loss of coordination. He physically collapsed on the field at Yankee Stadium in Florida.
Which had to be shocking for everyone watching.
Oh, totally. Yeah. He went through the entirety of spring training without hitting a single home run. We are talking about a man with almost 500 career homers.
Yeah, the journalists covering the team were just baffled. James Caan wrote this haunting observation. He noted that Gehrig wasn't flailing or striking out wildly. His eyes and his baseball IQ were still razor sharp.
So what was happening?
Well, Caan wrote, "I have seen him time a ball perfectly, swing on it as hard as he can, meet it squarely, and drive a soft, looping fly over the infield. His old power isn't there."
Wow. That perfectly describes the mechanism of amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. It's like a high-performance race car where the steering wheel and the pedals are slowly being disconnected from the engine.
Right.
The engine, his mind, his timing is still roaring. He knows exactly when and how to swing, but the transmission is cut. The electrical signals from the brain simply cannot reach the muscles.
And the devastating breaking point came a few games into the 1939 regular season. It was just a routine ground ball to first base. Pitcher Johnny Murphy ran over to cover the bag, but he had to awkwardly wait because Gehrig was struggling to literally drag himself over to first base to make the putout. Yeah. Murphy tried to encourage him, saying, "Nice play, Lou." But Gehrig knew the truth. He later said, "That was the simplest play you could ever make in baseball, and I knew then there was something wrong with me."
Which leads right back to our opening scene on May 2nd, when he finally benches himself. By June, his wife Eleanor is so worried she contacts the Mayo Clinic. Gehrig flies alone to Rochester, Minnesota. He undergoes 6 days of intense medical testing. And on June 19th, which happened to be his 36th birthday, doctors give him the diagnosis, ALS.
And the doctors actually delivered the brutal reality to Eleanor first.
They did.
Yeah, it was this painless but relentless destruction of the central nervous system. His mind would remain fully aware and active, but his body would experience rapidly increasing paralysis. They gave him roughly 2.5 years to live.
That is just heartbreaking.
Gehrig wrote a letter to Eleanor right after, assuring her the condition wasn't contagious and promising that he wouldn't lose his mind and become a burden on her.
Wow.
Even facing a terminal diagnosis, his primary anxiety was being a burden to someone else.
But there is a modern medical perspective on this tragedy that profoundly shifts how we look at the Iron Horse legacy.
Yes, it's a highly compelling, though unproven, theory. In 2010, the Journal of Neuropathology and Experimental Neurology published an article suggesting that some athletes diagnosed with ALS-like symptoms back then might actually have been suffering from CTE.
Wait, CTE,
Yeah.
like chronic traumatic encephalopathy.
Exactly.
The degenerative brain disease linked to repeated head trauma, which we usually associate with modern football players.
Right. And when you review Gehrig's history through this lens, the connections are kind of alarming.
How so?
He played fullback in college football. He played professional baseball in an era before batting helmets. We know he was knocked unconscious multiple times by high-velocity pitches to the head, and he played right through those concussions.
Yeah, the exhibition game where he was out cold.
Exactly. So the theory posits that this repeated brain trauma could catalyze motor neuron diseases that perfectly mimic ALS.
Wow. So his very identity as the Iron Horse, his sheer refusal to ever take a day off to heal from a severe concussion, might have been the biological catalyst for his own decline.
That is the tragic implication. Now, because Gehrig was cremated without an autopsy, neuropathologists stress that we will never know for absolute certainty. Examining historical medical records isn't enough to definitively diagnose CTE.
Right, that makes sense. We have to be clear about that.
Absolutely. But it profoundly recontextualizes his streak. It changes his durability from a testament of pure strength into something potentially fatal.
Regardless of the exact neurological trigger, Gehrig was facing a horrific, incurable reality. His athletic career was over, and this incredibly private man who hated public speaking and avoided the press whenever possible had to make one final, highly visible public appearance.
Yeah, on July 4th, 1939, the Yankees organized Lou Gehrig Appreciation Day. Over 61,000 fans packed into Yankee Stadium.
And the physical reality of his decline was just on full display. As dignitaries and groundskeepers handed him silver trophies and heavy plaques, he had to place them directly onto the dirt at his feet.
Because he couldn't hold them.
He literally did not have the arm strength left to hold his own awards.
He had been terrified of speaking, but as the crowd relentlessly chanted his name, he stepped to the microphones. He had memorized a few lines, just in case. And what followed is often referred to as baseball's Gettysburg Address.
I mean, imagine standing at that microphone. You are in front of 60,000 people. You have just been handed a terminal diagnosis. You are actively losing control of your body. And you look out at the crowd and say, fans, for the past 2 weeks, you've been reading about a bad break. Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
It's incredible. He used his time not to lament his fate, but to thank everyone else. The managers, the ownership, the groundskeepers, his parents, his wife. He concluded by saying he might have been given a bad break, but he had an awful lot to live for. The stadium cheered for nearly 2 minutes straight. And in one of the most iconic scenes in sports, Babe Ruth, whom Gehrig had been estranged from for years due to a personal dispute, walked out and threw his arms around him in a massive hug.
It is an incredibly powerful moment. But what is equally remarkable is how Gehrig chose to spend the little time he had left after baseball. He didn't retreat into isolation.
Far from it. He was offered numerous lucrative speaking tours and guest appearance gigs, which he turned down. Instead, he accepted a job from New York City Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia to serve as a parole commissioner.
For a salary of $5,700 a year, he could have made a fortune just making appearances.
But he took a modest civic job because he genuinely believed in public service. He wanted to help young men who had gotten into trouble find a reliable path forward.
That's so like him.
Yeah, and he insisted on zero press coverage. He would visit correctional facilities quietly, doing the unglamorous work. When his hands became too weak to sign official documents, his wife Eleanor would guide his hand. He continued to go to his City Hall office until just a month before his death.
He passed away on June 2nd, 1941. Exactly 16 years to the day after he stepped into Wally Pipp's spot in the lineup.
And his legacy reshaped how the sport honors its heroes. The Yankees immediately retired his number 4, making him the first player in Major League history to receive that honor.
Wow.
He was elected to the Hall of Fame in a special election. Eleanor never remarried, dedicating the next 40 years of her life to championing ALS research. And today, Major League Baseball honors him annually on June 2nd, officially recognized as Lou Gehrig Day.
When you step back and look at the totality of his life, the ultimate irony of Lou Gehrig becomes so clear. He spent his entire life, from his heavy burdens in childhood to his 2,130 consecutive games, known as an impenetrable machine, the guy who played with broken bones and never complained. But his most enduring legacy isn't his brute strength.
It's his vulnerability. It's the absolute grace, the dignity, and the immense gratitude he showed when all of that physical strength was violently stripped away. He proved that true resilience isn't just about refusing to break, it's about how you carry yourself when you finally do.
It brings us right back to that quiet moment in the Detroit dugout. I'm benching myself, Joe, for the good of the team. Recognizing when to step away requires as much courage as refusing to sit down. But we want to thank you for taking this deep dive with us today.
Yes, thank you.
And before we go, we want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We so often define our heroes and ourselves by our unbreakable records, our physical endurance, or our most visible talents. But if tomorrow your greatest ability was unexpectedly taken from you, what would you have left to be grateful for?